Welcome to Charts Today. It's Friday, the 1st of May, and I'm back at my desk after 2 weeks traveling around the US seeing clients and partners. And so it's good to be home and looking at the dollar index, first of all, that is still in this really long sideways trend. So the longer this goes on, the more significant the break will be. Which way will we break? Well, we've got a downside target implying a weaker dollar long term. But if we look at the very long term, this is the weekly chart, you can see here how that has just been gradually falling lower and we are below the clouds. So that's kind of what we expect to happen, but we have to wait for the break. And that means that we're seeing just action on other currencies. Japanese yen fell very heavily from 160 yesterday. That really smells of intervention on that chart. And could you have spotted it? Not really, but that move has activated a downside target. So can Japan, is that a top, that 160 level? This is sterling, waiting to see which way we break here. Stronger interest rates implied in the UK, so that's going to be quite significant as well. The one chart that I do find really interesting is the Chinese yuan, and if we look at the long-term chart, this is the dollar. How much yuan does it buy? It was 7.4. It's now down to 6.8. That's a very significant move, and clearly that's the Chinese currency strengthening versus the euro weakening. So really significant there. Looking at Bitcoin, that has shown a little bit of a recovery, but we are not quite through the cloud yet. But on the short-term chart, again, we may be hitting that cloud resistance, and we've got some downside targets there. The big one, of course, for me, I keep talking about it, is the bond markets. The Japanese bond here sitting above 2.5% now, and we've activated an upside target to 2.79%. So that's going to be really painful for Japan, a heavily indebted nation. Looking at US bond yields, we've again seeing that move and pull away, and now wouldn't take much to be making new highs for an upside target to around 5%. Looking at the UK bond market, that the 10-year gilt in the UK is consistently sitting now above 5%, 5.03%. So UK borrowing is now elevated, and that's going to be painful. And we look at the German bond, we've got targets hitting here as well, and the same on the Italian bond market. So really quite key here. 4% for Italy, 5% for the UK, and 3% for Germany. They're the upside targets. So bond market's still a concern. Looking at equities, we saw the S&P just slightly high yesterday. We got the future was actually up yesterday. We got the future. So US equity markets are really ignoring everything that's going on in the Middle East. We'll take a look at the oil price in a minute. But we can see here the NASDAQ elevated. We have very strong results out from Apple last night. We'll look at that chart in a minute. And of course, I mentioned this previously, the Dow is still struggling. Had a very strong day yesterday. This is the future. We'll look at the Dow constituents in a minute. But we are seeing here that's still not yet quite making a new high. The UK market down 0.5% this morning. We are seeing the DAX actually up quite sharply this morning, but still very much in this range, which you've talked about as well. Taking a look at looking at the crude oil price, first of all, the Middle East situation. I obviously do analyze this for clients. We've seen Brent crude up 1%. This is the July contract. So you might have seen headlines of crude oil at $125 and suddenly it's $111. You think, how did it fall so much? We've rolled into a new contract. And so this is the July contract, and this is still looking pretty bullish. So, and then if we look at US oil prices, they are sitting at $105, and most significantly, RBOB gasoline. This is the wholesale price of, if you like, petrol in the US, sitting at 365. That's the wholesale price, which means everyone at the pump is paying over $4, and we've got a target even higher. That's going to be politically challenging for the US government. Now, looking at the tech majors, I mentioned Apple. Very strong results out from Apple yesterday, which is really significant. It would be interesting to see how high they go today. The day before, we had strong results from Alphabet, and this was the reaction yesterday. Really big move there, nearly 10% higher. And of course, those of you who follow my work regularly know that Alphabet was the best looking Mag 7 chart at Christmas time. We are seeing Amazon just going high yesterday, pushing to that new high. They were the first Mag 7 stock to make a new high. Meta down significantly, down 8%. The market concerned about Meta's AI spending, and Microsoft's also down 4%. So really interesting. It's a game of two halves, and Nvidia also down, struggling to hold on to that high. That's really significant. Just really struggling to hold on to that high. So that's quite key as well. Tesla were up 2%, but realistically, that is still a pretty bearish chart, and we can see here we're waiting to see if we activate that upside target. So that's quite key. Looking at gold, that's down 1%. So that is still remaining depressed. Looking at the short-term chart, we're falling away, just struggling whilst we're below this trend on the short term to get to upside targets. They're counter trend. We shouldn't be surprised to see that. Looking at the Dow Jones constituents yesterday, Caterpillar, they were up nearly 10% as well. What a fantastic chart that has been. Bullish above the cloud with upside targets. You can't ignore these targets when they're there. And if you look at the short-term chart, there's a new big upside target there as well. And then if we go into the worst performer was Nvidia, Microsoft. So Walmart up 3%, another very strong performer. So again, upside target dominating. This target is counter trend. Remember, we give favor to upside targets that are in line with the trend. The Nasdaq, we had Qualcomm up 15%. So that was a recovery. That target given there met. A lot of chip stocks still rising. Western Micro up 5%, AMD up 5%. So we're really seeing big moves there. Seagate up as well, nearly 5%. Looking at the UK market this morning, first of all, we go to the risers. We've got Pearson up 3.5%. That's the medium-term chart for Pearson. If we look at the short-term chart, you can see those targets were given and met. We've got Whitbread up 2%, not looking as strong. That's really not a great-looking chart. And on the other end of the scale, we can also look at, we've got banks down, we've got NatWest down 2.8%. That downside target has been met. That's on the 60-minute chart. So again, really quite interesting to watch that. Anyway, that's it for today. Have a great weekend. It's a long weekend in the UK. So I won't be back until Tuesday. Watch your targets and your trends. It's going to be key. And those bond markets are the things that still have me a little bit concerned. Until Tuesday, happy charting. Bye for now.